While it might not be the coolest bid strategy to talk about, I'm still a really big fan of manual CPC bidding in certain scenarios. Not every account is built for target CPA or maximize conversion value, but many people that we talk to that test manual CPC get really frustrated and they say it doesn't work. But more often than not, it's because they weren't managing it properly. So in this video, we want to walk you through the steps that we think help you manage a manual CPC bid strategy the right way so you can get the results you're looking for. For the entirety of this video, we're going to be in a PowerPoint presentation because we tried to record this within the accounts and it just didn't make sense. We had to blur a lot. It was really difficult. Anyway, we think this does the best way of highlighting the challenges that we see with manual CPC and addressing what you need to do next. So first, this is not an uncommon change history that we see with accounts. Right now we're going in reverse calendar order. So on the far left side, you can see that the bottom line had the first change on February 14th, 2024 at 9:02 a.m. The bid for this single keyword we're going to look at were increased from 285 to 356. Next line up, literally 1 minute later, bids were increased from 356 to 719. Everything stayed fully stable until July 5th, when the keyword bid was pulled from $7.19 all the way down to the ad group default of $1.31. Now, over the course of this video, we'll talk about the myriad problems that we have with this type of change history, but the most glaring one is if you just take the change percentage that each of these bids were. The first change was a 25% increase, which is fine. It's a little on the higher side, but that's all right. But then 1 minute later, it ended up going up 102%. So between those two, that's well over 100% change just from the baseline of 285. So it's a big increase. And then after things stayed stable for however many months, the bid was pulled down 82% from the 719 high that it was, all the way down to the lowest that we saw during this time frame at $1.31. So these are very large bid changes that we're seeing for this singular keyword after no activity of changes in the middle. And this is kind of the core reason that we see issues with manual CPC campaigns. So now that we've shown you what usually happens, let's talk about what should be happening. For the rest of this section, we're going to use a different account because it has a lot more data that we can work with and better examples. So for this account, it's got a decent amount of volume coming through these campaigns, and the cost per lead target or CPA target is about $100. So whenever we're showing you data on the screen, just keep in mind that our CPA goal is about $100. So the first cadence of changes that we do is going to be on a weekly basis. This is because most accounts can tolerate weekly changes to keyword bids, or if nothing else, at least a review of changes every week. There's kind of three main buckets that we end up looking at. We try and focus on strong performers, low performers, and outliers. For each of these, we're going to give small bid adjustments based on how they're performing compared to our target. So first, let's look at some strong performers. You can see on the screen here that we have things filtered for enabled keywords with more than one conversion, and cost per conversion is less than $100. You can then easily save these filters so that you only have to do them once. Just go back, click the button, find it really easy again. But here we have 5 keywords that are outperforming our CPA target. So these types of keywords would probably give about a 10% bid boost to. Now you might be asking, if some of these keywords are well below $100, why wouldn't you give a more aggressive bid boost? That's because we want to incrementally work our way up to the point where we're getting as much volume as possible while maintaining our target CPA. If we all of a sudden give these keywords a 100 or 200% bid increase, we might all of a sudden blow out the budget, not see the conversions come through, and now we're way over our CPA target. So instead, we want to incrementally get there and have a more conservative growth approach for these keywords. Low performers, the filter is going to be the same, but we're going to find keywords with a cost per conversion over our $100 target. Here we've got one keyword, it's got 2 conversions, but the cost per conversion is at $293. Here, since we're a little bit over the range that I would like to be, we're going to give a 15% bid decrease. If we were maybe closer to $193 cost per conversion, maybe I'll give a 10% bid decrease, try to bring it down a little more slowly, but 15% is kind of the highest I like to do at a weekly basis. Another low performer review that I always do is find all the keywords that have no conversions and then put them descending by spend. So here that top keyword, workers' compensation Oregon, has about $120 in spend, but no conversions. Everything else is below the target CPA that we're looking at. And what I like to keep in mind here is that if that keyword converted today, we would have a $120 cost per conversion. I'm usually okay with that. This is a non-brand campaign. We have brand campaigns in this account to help offset the non-brand performance. So $120 is not too much for me to start making changes. If we start to see that number growing to 2 to 3 times the cost per conversion target that we have, we're going to start making some changes. We'll actually talk about that in a little bit. Now, these changes seem really easy. Seems like you got a good handle on the weekly changes, right? But this process can go awry pretty easily, and we do see this happen quite a bit when we start to coach folks on how to do regular manual bid changes. Let's take an example time frame. Let's say that on July 15th, you launched new keywords in an account. After a week, you did your weekly performance review. You did a good job. You checked in. You made adjustments based on the time that those keywords were active. Then you came back a week later on July 29th. Your keywords have been active for 2 weeks, so you made bid adjustments based on the last 14 days worth of data because now you have more to optimize on. And then you let the campaigns run. Now you're a 3-week performance review on August 5th, and again, you've got even more data, so you start to make bid adjustments based on the collective performance you've seen for the last 21 days. Now here's the problem. Each time you hit a weekly review, you've been optimizing on the same performance over and over and over again. That first week, you optimized on the data just one time because you only had 1 week worth of data. But the second time you came back, you optimized on 14 days worth of data. So technically that first week of performance, you optimized on twice. And then when you came back on August 5th, you actually optimized on that first week from July 15th to July 22nd 3 times. You've then also optimized on the performance from July 22nd to July 29th twice. In this example, there could be some keywords that had a really slow start that first week and saw better performance the second week, but depending on what changes you made, you've optimized on that poor performance that it had the first week 2, maybe 3 times, and it's not given it a good chance to try and progress and improve. So what we actually need to do is make adjustments that look a little more like this. That first week, we did everything right. We looked at the performance for the 7 days that the keywords have been active. But then when we came back on July 29th, we should have optimized on only the data since we made changes from July 22nd to the 29th. And then following that same pattern, when you come back for the weekly change on August 5th, you should only really be looking at the data from July 29th to August 5th for optimizations. You can certainly look back further, and we're going to talk about some other cadences here in a minute. But if you're making regular weekly bid adjustments, you want to make sure that you're only optimizing on the data one time, not multiple times. And there's a super easy way to remember that. Whatever your regular cadence is for bid changes, your look-back window should match that. If you're making adjustments every week, only look back at the last 7 days. If you're making bid adjustments every 2 weeks, look back at the last 14 days. Monthly is 30 days and quarterly is 90 days, so on and so forth. Ideally, you're making changes a lot more than quarterly, but depending on how much volume you have, maybe that's all you can sustain. But the biggest thing here is to make sure that you're only optimizing on data one time, so that whether a keyword is improving over time or getting worse over time, you're making adjustments based on its most recent performance as it trends up or down, and not either penalizing it or rewarding it for the initial behavior that it had a long time ago. Now, I mentioned other regular cadences. So these weekly reviews, we're looking at like a 10 to 15% indicator of how performance is trending, but we do put in some layers of additional reviews. We will also do monthly reviews looking for midterm performance trends. Here we have longer date ranges. We're only reviewing the monthly performance 1 month at a time, and we'll make some medium bid adjustments, whether it's 20 to 25%. And yes, these do clash a bit with the weekly performance reviews, but over time, they'll balance out to either increase your bid or decrease your bid based on how that keyword is performing. If a keyword is getting better in those weekly reviews, odds are in the monthly reviews, it's also getting better. But for each of these, we still only look back at 7 or 30 days to make those bid adjustments, and we stick pretty religiously to either the 10 to 15% range or the 20 to 25% range. Quarterly reviews are a little bit different. For most of our accounts, that's a pretty long time. There's going to be a lot of data that's associated with a single quarter. For this, we might not be making percentage changes, or if we do, they're probably going to be something of 30, 40, or 50% bid changes. But more often, we're looking at pausing keywords, changing bid strategies, making sure we've got all the right negatives and positive keywords in the account. I want to show you an example of one specific reason why we do quarterly reviews if they're not going to lean into the percentage bid changes. So for this account, we have this workers' compensation insurance quote keyword. We've got the exact and phrase match version. It was easy to just show you both. On a weekly review, this keyword hit $77, no conversions. Like we talked about earlier, that means it's still below our cost per conversion target. And if it converts tomorrow, $77 is right in the wheelhouse that we want to be. So no actions are taken here because we want to give it a chance to perform. Now on a monthly review, this keyword is looking at $216, no conversions. Now we're getting to be twice the estimated cost per lead that we want to have in here. So we're probably going to make one of those 20 to 25% bid adjustments. In this example, this keyword got a bid adjustment at the monthly level, but would have flown under the radar at the weekly level. That's why we do both of those. But then additionally, we also look at the quarterly review, because at this point, this keyword spent 3 times the cost per conversion target we're trying to hit, and it's not doing anything. So here, we might want to take a look at why this keyword is performing like this. We're going to look at the search queries. Even though it's exact match, doesn't mean it's going to be exact. We're going to look at ad copy. Is that different than the rest of the campaign? We're going to look at competition because this keyword has an average cost per click of $52, which is quite frankly much higher than the average in this account. So we'll take a look at that, figure out if this is even a keyword to bid on. This is where our big changes come in, because if we don't make those big changes, once we look at a semi-annual review, now we're up to $400, almost $450 in spend, no conversions. This is where we just need to turn this keyword off. All of the strategy changes haven't figured things out. If anything, the cost per click only got higher. So this keyword is a really good example of why we do weekly reviews, but also why the monthly, quarterly, and sometimes even a longer semi-annual or annual review is necessary for Manual CPC campaigns. But we're talking about just keyword bids. And yes, Manual CPC focuses on your keyword bid, but we find that all optimizations when it comes to manual campaigns need to be done on some sort of cadence like this. Not the least of which is going to be all of your bid modifiers. We got this image from our friends at Optimizer. I refer back to this frequently to remember which bid modifiers are customizable with which bid strategy. As you can see in the orange box, Manual CPC lets you adjust every single one of these 6 bid modifiers within your Manual CPC campaign. To do that, it's pretty simple. Just got to go into the Google Ads interface, find the demographics section. They've got a breakdown for age. As you can see here, you can make a bid adjustment based on the age ranges that Google has preset for you. You can do the same thing with the person's gender, as well as their household income within the United States, which is based on zip codes. So it's not perfect. None of these are perfect, to be quite honest, but they can help you notice trends within your campaigns, within your performance, and give you the leverage to be able to increase bids incrementally for areas of your account that are performing better and decrease it for those that aren't. Again, this would fall into probably a monthly review for me. I would look at each of these on a monthly basis, make anywhere from 10 to 25% bid adjustments, and try to optimize in a trending fashion based on what the performance is telling me since the last time I made changes. Let's close out by looking at the rest of these. Devices are now hidden in a weird spot. They're in the Insights and Reports section under When and Where Ads Showed. Then you got to click the Devices tab, and then you can put in your bid modifiers for whichever layer of your account you want to have in there. And personally, I always add some sort of ad schedule. Usually looks something like this, where I've got all of the days 12 a.m. to 6 a.m., 6 a.m. to noon, noon to 6 p.m., 6 p.m. to midnight are all separate so that I can adjust bids based on how those are performing. Even for you businesses that are not tied to certain times when you're open or not, ad scheduling can be really useful, especially with Manual CPC bidding, because you never know which pockets of performance you're going to find and be able to lean into. Geo-targeting is going to be the same way. I almost always have my campaigns look like this. We've got a top line of United States, but then I also add each of the individual states down below. Because again, if for whatever reason, South Dakota performs drastically better than West Virginia, don't you want to be able to take advantage of that? That's what Manual CPC bidding gives us access to. You can get all the way down to certain zip code levels if you want. There might become a point where it's not really sustainable for you to do that on a regular basis, but if you're trying to squeeze out the best performance from your account, make sure that you're layering in these additional targets. And quite frankly, all of this is a ton of work, and that's just what it takes to see good performance out of Manual CPC campaigns. You're not handing over the keys to Google, you're doing it yourself, And if you want to try and lean in as much to your performance trends as possible, you're going to need to actively manage your accounts. There are some ways that we can make this a little easier. You can use automated rules with these established patterns. So you'll remember earlier I said finding all of the keywords that are enabled, has at least one conversion, and cost per conversion is either over or under $100. You can set up a rule that does this, tell it what to do, so it'll decrease the bid by 10% if the cost per conversion is over $100. The biggest thing you need to do is make sure that your look back window matches the frequency that you're using for the change. So here you can see I have using data from all time. We want to set that to the last 7 days because the change frequency that we have is to run this weekly. Pretty simple. If you were going to run this change every other week, change it to the last 14 days. If you want to run it once a month, have the look back window be the last 30 days. Super easy. Just make sure that you're matching up the frequency to the data that you're using so that you're optimizing on data only one time around. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm still a big fan of Manual CPC. It's a really good option for brand new accounts, new campaigns, and new conversion actions within existing accounts and campaigns because those areas might not have any performance data to go on. Although Google says its conversion-focused smart bidding strategies can optimize for your conversions without any data, my experience says that sure they can, but they're not very good at it. It's better when you start off giving it a decent amount of volume, optimizing things manually, and then hand over the reins. They're also really good for when you have really low conversion volume. Again, Google thinks that it can optimize with no conversions, but I always try to follow the rule of having at least 30 conversions in the last 30 days, ideally 50 or more in the last 30 days. And if you're below that threshold, might make sense for you to shift to manual if you're not seeing good results from smart bidding strategies. We all hate it when it happens, but I've already had conversion tracking fail in one of my accounts 3 times in the past calendar year. Something happens, tags get removed, it is what it is, but when your conversion tracking stops working, Google sees every person who clicks as a lost conversion. It doesn't see any successes, and it starts to learn that it did something wrong by targeting those users. That's not the case. You can add in exclusions to your bid strategy, but sometimes it makes sense to revert all the way back to manual, optimize things that way for a little bit, get some performance under your belt, and then shift back over to the smart bidding strategies. And the other option is if you're optimizing for actions further down the funnel. If you're using something like HubSpot, you can import your marketing qualified lead, opportunity, and customer data. And although those can be incorporated into bid strategies, a lot of the accounts that Joe and I work on end up being larger B2B accounts where that sales window takes a really long time to close. You might be able to get that data into the interface, but in terms of using it for bidding, doesn't really help out. So instead we import these as secondary conversions, which is why most of them show up in the all conversions column. And then we take those insights, manually incorporate them into our bid changes for individual keywords, budget adjustments at campaign levels, all that good stuff. But it can really help see good performance from these further down the funnel actions. And although we talked about manual bidding, and this entire video is about that, I do want to make it clear that Google has a lot more real-time insights into bidding than we ever will. We have controls over what audience somebody's in, their demographic information, what device they're on, location, ad schedule, all that good stuff. And those are all listed on the left. But Google has more things that it can go off of. It knows the person's operating system, the browser, which ad creative they're looking at, what the actual query was, because now they hide that stuff from us sometimes. There's all these different signals that Google can use to potentially make a more educated bid than you can. And if you're struggling to make Manual CPC work, even after following all these steps, and you really want to be able to take advantage of that, and you have enough conversion data, you can shift over into a lot more of the fully automated bid strategies that Google has. The ones in the left-hand column here are going to be the smart ones, so max conversion value, target CPA, target ROAS, but there are a handful of other bid strategies if you're not as conversion focused that you can utilize as well. Hopefully this rundown has given you a much better understanding of why campaigns that leverage Manual CPC tend to fail. As I mentioned earlier, I still think there's tons of use cases for when to use Manual CPC bidding. Yes, Google's bid strategies can be really smart, but sometimes it's best to just get in there, get your hands dirty, do the work yourself. Hopefully this video has given you some ideas as to why your Manual CPC bids might not be performing as well as you want. and some strategies to improve your regular cadence of reviews to make sure that you're taking advantage of all the tools and optimizing your account in the correct fashion. If you have any additional questions about manual CPC bidding or any of the other bid strategies on Google Ads, leave us a note in the comments below. Thanks for watching our video. We really appreciate it. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up below. If you really liked it, maybe think about subscribing to the Paid Media Pros YouTube channel and you'll get alerted every time a new video drops.
If you really liked it, you can help support the channel by checking out some of the t-shirts that we're wearing on our merch shelf, as well as looking at the Super Thanks button.